Racism is a pervasive and pressing issue in our society and has been for centuries now, and in many cases comes down to a matter of life and death. But how is racism present and operating in the film industry? This video is based on a study made by the London School of Economics and Political Science, led by Dr. Clive James Nwonka, called Race, Ethnicity and the UK Film Industry, an analysis of the BFI's Diversity Standards. This research was carried out between September 2019 and May 2020. I will leave a link to the study in the description so that you can read it for yourself once you finish watching this video. Ethnic minorities are represented in less than 5% of the workforce across the sector. Why is this the case? Informal recruitment practices, white gatekeepers, and structural racism have prevented any efforts to increase diversity in the industry from taking effect. Diversity Standards was launched by the BFI in 2016 to address the issue of underrepresentation in the film industry. This covered a number of bases: A. On-screen representation, themes and narratives; B. Project leadership and creative practitioners; C. Industry access and opportunities; and D. Opportunities for diversity in audience development. In essence, the purpose of diversity standards is to ensure that films have an adequate amount of representation for underrepresented groups, such as different genders, people with disabilities, ethnic minorities, etc. This particular study, done by the London School of Economics and Political Science, focuses on categories A and B. The study found that for certain criterion, gender was mentioned almost double the number of times as race/ethnicity. Data revealed that there was surprisingly no correlation between the budget of the films and the diversity of the workforce on and off screen. It is evident in almost all genres that representation of ethnic minorities is extremely low, especially in war and sci-fi. Figures for Standard B, which refers to people working behind the camera, were also quite low, with some genres like family and fantasy not referencing race or ethnicity at all. Overall, the analysis shows an improvement in representation of ethnic minorities in the film industry, but also reveals that underrepresentation remains a relevant problem. According to the key findings of the study, representation remains low in areas such as lead roles and department heads. On a positive note, the results show an improvement in the representation of women who have faced discrimination, exclusion, and misogyny for years in the film industry, and this should not be seen as being to the detriment of representation for other groups. The study notes that this analysis of the gender category is not intersectional, meaning that it does not show how race and ethnicity, socioeconomic background, and disabilities and other URGs are within the gender category. A development where diversity standards is able to provide insight into these intersections will help to reveal how structural discrimination is allowed to continue in the film industry. Because what do women look like? Women come from a variety of backgrounds, and it's important to remember that underrepresented groups overlap in a number of ways. The study also notes that there should be a distinction between BAME and Eastern European white minorities as identities, seeing as the ability of certain acting talent to perform as white British characters while satisfying the diversity standards criteria creates ambiguity when understanding the level of on-screen representation for people of colour. The next phase of research for Dr. Nwonka will be analysing anecdotal evidence from BAME individuals who are and have been working on film productions to gain an understanding of their lived experience in the film industry. Moving on from this study, some people argue that having quotas and set standards for the number of underrepresented groups being employed in any field of work is discrimination in itself, and that people should be employed based on their ability to do the job. This perspective, whilst understandable, is very misguided. These standards are not discriminatory and do not seek to employ people simply for being a person of colour, but rather ensure that structural racism, which is present in all areas of society, does not prevent talented people who aren't white from getting the jobs and recognition that they deserve. Why else are quotas a good thing? In order to combat and eventually defeat structural racism in the workplace, it's important to promote diversity of thought, i.e. having a diverse set of writers in the writer's room of a show would mean that a variety of different groups would be more likely to have meaningful representation, as there would be people from a vast number of backgrounds to present ideas and perspectives. In essence, diversity breeds diversity, theoretically, and we shouldn't make the mistake of relying only on quotas to dismantle structural racism in the film industry and all fields of work. It's also important to listen and learn from the lived experiences of ethnic minorities so that we can collectively take back control from racism.